The great hall of the space station was alive with noise. Bright lights flashed from tall screens, showing the names and prices of the slaves. Strange alien traders stood in a half circle around the stage, their voices mixing into a strange storm. Of sound, some shouted numbers, others hissed in alien languages. And the smell of metal, oil, and fear filled the air, one by one. The slaves were brought forward. They were from many worlds, tall ones with silver skin, short ones with crystal eyes. Creatures covered in fur or scales, each stood trembling. As the auctioneer, a fat alien with glowing eyes, called out their value. The crowd always found someone to buy them, no matter the price, near the end of the line. Far from the bright lights, there was one last cage. Inside sat a small figure, thin and weak-looking. His clothes were torn, his skin pale, and his eyes dull like glass. He did not lift his head. Even when the cage door creaked open, he had stopped caring long ago. The auctioneer dragged him out. By the arm, this one, the alien laughed, is worthless. The crowd joined the laughter. Can't work, someone shouted. Probably can't even talk. Another said. A few aliens turned away, not wanting to waste even a single credit. The slave's head stayed down. His heart beat slowly, without hope. He had seen this before. No one would buy him, and he would be thrown back into the cages until he died. It was just a matter of time. But then, someone moved through the crowd. A tall figure in a dark coat, walking without hurry. His face was human, a rare sight on this station. The other traders gave him strange looks. Humans were not common here, and they almost never came to slave auctions. The man stopped in front of the stage. He looked at the slave for a long moment. The crowd went quiet for a second, expecting him to turn away like the rest. But instead, the human spoke. "I'll buy him." The auctioneer blinked. The crowd burst into laughter again. "Humans are strange," someone muttered. "You want this useless one?" The auctioneer asked, smiling with disbelief. "Yes," the human said simply. "No bargaining, no questions. I'll pay the full price." The slave slowly raised his head. He had never seen a human before. The man's eyes were calm, but sharp, as if they could see right into him. Why would a stranger buy him? It made no sense. The auctioneer shrugged and named a low price. The human paid without a word, transferring the credits through a small glowing device. The crowd shook their heads, still chuckling as they turned back to other business. The auctioneer unlocked the slave's collar. It fell to the floor with a dull sound. The slave rubbed his neck, unsure what to do next. The human stepped closer. "What's your name?" he asked. The slave hesitated, his voice dry and weak. "I don't remember," he said. The human nodded slowly. "Then we'll find it again," he replied. The hall was still noisy, but for the slave, it felt strangely quiet. He followed the human through the crowd. Alien traders stared at them. As they passed, some shook their heads, others whispered. The slave could feel their eyes on him. For the first time in years, he felt something like curiosity. Why would a human choose him when no one else wanted to? As they reached the exit of the station hall, the human stopped. He leaned slightly toward the slave and spoke in a low voice. "I didn't buy you because I pity you," he said. The slave frowned, not understanding. The human's eyes narrowed with a strange light. "I bought you because I need you." The slave's heart gave a small, uncertain jump. Need him? For what? He was useless, wasn't he? Before he could ask, the human started walking again, outside. The docking bay was filled with ships of every shape and size. The human led him toward a dark, sleek vessel resting at the far end. It looked fast, dangerous, and alive in a way the slave couldn't explain. They stopped at the foot of the ramp. The human turned to him again. "From this moment," he said, "your life changes." The slave looked up at him, still unsure, still afraid. but something in the human's voice made him follow without thinking. The ramp closed behind them, shutting out the noise of the station. In the quiet of the ship's corridor, the human spoke again. "There are things you don't remember," he said, "and when you do, the galaxy will change." The slave stared at him, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope. Before he could say anything, the ship's engines roared to life. The floor trembled, the stars shifted outside the windows, and somewhere deep inside, the slave felt the first spark of something he thought he had lost forever: possibility. The ship glided away from the space station, its engines humming like a distant storm. Through the small window in the corridor, the slave watched the lights of the station grow smaller until they were nothing but tiny sparks in the endless black. He felt as if he had left one prison, only to step into another. The human captain walked ahead without looking back. His long coat swaying with each step, they entered a narrow room lit by a soft blue glow. The walls were lined with strange devices, wires like veins running between them. The slave stood near the door, unsure if he should step inside. The human turned, his face half hidden in shadow. "Sit," he said simply. Pointing to a small seat near a console, the slave obeyed. He could feel the ship's quiet heartbeat through the floor, a steady rhythm that seemed alive. The human poured a drink into a metal cup and handed it to him. It was warm, and for a moment, the slave realized he could not remember the last time someone had given him food or drink without shouting at him first. "You're wondering why I bought you," the human said, leaning against the console. The slave hesitated, then nodded. The human studied him for a long time, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I don't buy people," the captain said. "At last I choose them." The words made no sense. The slave frowned. "I'm nothing," he said softly. "I can't work. I can't fight. I don't even." His voice trailed off. The human raised a hand to silence him. "You can," he said firmly. "You just don't remember." The slave looked down. He had no memory before the cages, only flashes of light, fear, and voices he couldn't place. The human leaned forward, his voice low. "You were taken for a reason, and the ones who took you, they think you're forgotten." The slave's head lifted slightly, a small spark of interest in his eyes. "But you're not forgotten," the captain continued. "Someone tried very hard to erase who you are, and I'm going to help you find out why." The slave shook his head. "Why me? Why not by someone strong, someone useful?" The human gave a small smile. "Because strength is not always muscle," he said. "Sometimes it's memory, sometimes it's what you won't know, and sometimes it's who you are." Before the slave could speak again, a soft alarm chimed from the console. The captain's eyes narrowed. He pressed a button and a small holographic display appeared, showing 3 red dots moving toward their ship. "Trouble," the captain muttered. The slave stared at the glowing dots. "What is that?" "Ships," the human replied. "And they're following us?" The captain stood, his movements quick and sure. "Stay here," he ordered, before leaving the room. But the slave couldn't stay still. He followed quietly, keeping close to the shadows of the corridor, through the open door of the cockpit. He saw the captain at the controls, his fingers moving across the panels. Outside the windows, 3 dark shapes grew larger, their silhouettes sharp against the starfield. The captain spoke into a small headset, his voice calm but edged with steel. "This is the vessel Aurora. I advise you to break off your pursuit." A deep, distorted voice answered. "You have something we want, human." The captain's eyes flicked toward the corridor. He knew exactly what they wanted. "Not for sale," the captain said, shutting off the channel. The slave's chest tightened. They were here for him, but why? What could he possibly have that anyone wanted? The 3 ships closed in, their lights flashing like hungry eyes. The captain tapped a series of commands, and the Aurora swerved sharply to the left. Engines roaring, the slave stumbled against the wall, gripping a handrail to stay upright. The captain glanced back toward him. "You know how to follow instructions," he called out. The slave nodded quickly, though his hands were shaking. "Good," the captain said. "Come here." The slave stepped into the cockpit, feeling the hum of the controls under his feet. The captain handed him a small, black device. It was smooth, cold, and heavier than it looked. "What is it?" the slave asked. "A key," the captain said, "but it only works if you use it." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do," the captain interrupted, his voice firm. "Your mind knows, even if you don't remember." The slave looked down at the device. It pulsed faintly in his hand, as if it had a heartbeat. Something stirred inside him, a flicker of recognition. A memory tried to surface tunnels of metal, a glowing panel, his own hands moving quickly over it. The sound of alarms, voices shouting his name, a name he still couldn't hear clearly. The captain's voice cut through his thoughts. "They're locking weapons on us." The slave looked at the 3 ships on the screen, now close enough to see the alien markings along their hulls. Something about those markings made his chest ache with fear. He had seen them before, long ago, in the moment before his life had been torn apart. "Now," the captain said. The slave's fingers tightened around the device, and deep in the back of his mind, a door began to open. The device in the slave's hand pulsed like it was alive. The Aurora shook under the weight of enemy fire, the deck vibrating beneath his feet. The captain's voice was steady but urgent. "Use it now," he said. The slave stared at the smooth black surface. "How?" he asked. "You already know," the captain replied. His eyes locked on the enemy ships closing in. The slave's fingers moved almost without thought. Tracing lines along the device's surface, symbols glowed faintly under his touch. Strange, but familiar. A screen on the ship's console lit up, showing an encrypted channel. His breath caught. He knew this code. It was buried deep inside his mind, but it had been waiting for him all along. The captain leaned over his shoulder. "Send it," he ordered. The slave pressed a symbol that felt like the right choice. At once, a low hum filled the air, a frequency that seemed to pass through the bones of the ship. On the radar, the enemy ships slowed, their formation breaking, their hesitating. The captain said quietly, "Good." The slave's heart pounded. "What did I just do?" "You spoke to someone they don't want to hear from," the captain said. The slave didn't understand. But there was no time to ask. The captain turned the ship sharply. Sliding between 2 drifting asteroids, the Aurora's hull scraped. A jagged edge, sparks flying past the windows. The slave held on to the seat, his knuckles white. When they finally cleared the rocks, the captain eased the ship forward and activated the autopilot. He turned to face the slave, his gaze sharp. "I didn't come to that auction by accident," he said. "I've been looking for you." The slave blinked, confused. "Me? Why?" The captain leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because you're the last one." The words felt heavy. "The last what?" the slave asked. The captain studied him for a long moment before answering. "The last survivor of Project Veil." The slave felt something stir inside him again. A flicker of memory, bright lights, cold metal floors, a group of faces, all young like him, voices calling numbers, machines humming, and then a screaming. His chest tightened. "I don't remember," he whispered. "You will," the captain said. "But first, we need to finish what they started." The slave shook his head. What was Project Veil? The captain glanced at the stars ahead, his jaw tight. "A plan," he said. "A way to hide knowledge inside living minds, so deep that not even the person carrying it would know. Unless the right trigger unlocked it." The slave stared at the device in his hand. "This is one of the triggers." The captain confirmed. The slave's voice was small. "Why hide it in me?" Because you were the only one who could carry it without breaking. The captain replied. His tone carried both respect and sadness. Before the slave could ask more, the ship's alarm blared again. The radar showed a massive shape emerging. From hyperspace ahead, it was a warship, larger than any vessel the slave had ever seen. Its hull was covered in the same markings he had seen on the enemy ships before. He froze. "I know that ship," he said, his voice trembling. The captain's hand tightened on the controls. "Good," he said. "Then you know why we can't run?" The slave turned to him in shock. "We can't fight that. It's impossible." The captain gave a faint smile. "That's why we have you." The warship's deep, echoing voice filled the Aurora's comms. "This is Commander Thal of the Dominion Fleet. Surrender the human vessel, or be destroyed." The captain calmly shut off the channel. He looked at the slave. "They think you're still the broken boy they left behind." He said, "Let's prove them wrong." The slave swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" The captain pointed to the device. "Use it again. But this time, open everything." The slave felt the weight of those words. "What will happen?" The captain's eyes narrowed. "Either we die, or we change the galaxy." The slave closed his eyes, letting his fingers glide over the device. This time, the symbols came faster, the patterns flowing naturally. The air in the room grew warmer. The lights flickered. A hidden part of his mind began to unlock. Memories crashed into him, training rooms, secret codes, hidden escape tunnels, and a map of something vast and powerful. He gasped as the last piece fell into place. "I remember," he whispered. The captain leaned forward. "Then show me what you can do." The slave's hands flew over the ship's secondary console, entering strings of code faster than he could think. The warship ahead suddenly shifted, its massive guns powering down on the radar. Smaller Dominion ships began scattering, their engines cutting out one by one. The captain's eyes widened in admiration. "You just told the Dominion's own fleet to stand down," he said. The slave looked up at him, breathing hard. "No," he said slowly. "I just told them. I'm back." The captain smiled for real this time. "Then our mission begins," he said. The Aurora surged forward, heading straight toward the silent warship, and for the first time in years, the slave felt not like a prisoner, but like someone who had a choice. The warship loomed ahead like a dark mountain in space. Its jagged hull blocked the starlight, casting the Aurora in its shadow. The slave sat in the co-pilot's seat, his breathing uneven. Memories kept flashing in his mind, faces of others like him, long corridors, locked doors, and the endless hum of machines. Each memory came with a stab of emotion, fear, loss, anger. The captain watched him quietly, giving him space to process. "You're remembering more," the captain said at last. The slave nodded slowly. "They trained us for something," he whispered. "Something big. But I don't know what it was for." "You'll know soon," the captain replied, his voice calm but firm. The comms crackled suddenly. "Human vessel. This is Commander Thal. You have 30 seconds to surrender." The captain muted the channel without hesitation. He turned to the slave. "They don't want you free. They want you erased." The slave's hands tightened on the small black device. "Why me?" he asked again, the question feeling heavier now. The captain's gaze was steady. "Because you're the only one left who can wake the core." The word struck something inside the slave's mind. The core. He didn't know what it was, but the sound of it sent a strange shiver down his spine. "I've heard that name before," he said softly. "You didn't just hear it." The captain replied, "You knew it once." The captain pressed a button, and a hidden compartment in the console slid open. Inside was a small silver cube, no larger than a fist, glowing faintly from within. "This is the map to the core," he said, "and the device you hold is the only key that can unlock it." The slave stared at the cube. "What's in the core?" "Something that can end the Dominion's rule," the captain said, his tone like steel. The slave's breath caught. "You mean?" "A weapon." The captain's eyes darkened. "No, something older, something stronger knowledge. Before the slave could ask more, the warship's lights flared, and beams of energy shot past the Aurora. The ship rattled violently, alarms blaring. The captain gripped the controls, swerving sharply. "We're not going to survive a head-on fight," he said. "So we're going to get inside." The slave's eyes widened. "Inside that?" The captain nodded. "Your codes can open their hangar, but you'll need to remember all of them." The slave closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the symbols flow in his mind. Bits of old training returned, a voice calling out sequences, a screen flashing red until he got it right. His fingers moved over the device, entering the long-forgotten pattern on the radar. The warship's hangar doors began to open slowly. Bright lights spilled into the darkness of space. "They don't know it's us yet," the captain said with a grin. "Let's keep it that way." The Aurora slipped inside like a shadow. The hangar ceiling shut behind them. The interior of the Dominion ship was massive. Rows of alien fighters lined the walls, and towering machines moved along rails above. No guards were in sight. The slave felt his stomach twist. "They're letting us in," he said quietly. "This is a trap." The captain's smile faded. "Then we spring it on them." They moved quickly, the captain leading the way through a maintenance tunnel. The air was heavy with the scent of oil and heat. As they turned a corner, 2 Dominion soldiers appeared, tall, armored, with weapons that glowed at the tips. The captain didn't hesitate. He moved like lightning, striking one soldier's weapon away and slamming him into the wall. The slave froze, but when the second soldier raised his weapon, instinct took over. His hand shot forward, pressing the black device against the soldier's armor. A flash of light erupted, and the soldier collapsed instantly. The slave stared at his hand, breathing hard. I didn't know it could do that." "It's more than a key," the captain said. "It's part of you." They reached a heavy blast door at the end of the tunnel. The captain stepped aside. "Your turn," he said. The slave pressed the device to the control panel. The metal door groaned, then slid open, revealing a chamber bathed in blue light. In the center stood a massive sphere of glass-like material. Floating above the floor, inside, swirling patterns of light moved like a living storm. The slave's breath caught. "I know this," he whispered. "We trained with models of it. The core interface." The captain stepped closer, his voice low. "This ship has a direct link to the core. If you connect, you can find its location." The slave hesitated. "What happens when I connect?" The captain met his gaze. "You'll remember everything." The thought terrified him, but something deep inside told him it was time. He stepped forward and placed his hands against the sphere. A shock of energy raced up his arms, flooding into his mind. His vision blurred. Faces, places, maps, codes, and battles all crashed into his memory at once. He saw the day the Dominion attacked the facility, saw his friends falling one by one, saw himself being dragged away. And then he saw the core, buried deep beneath a dying star, guarded by fleets beyond counting. The lights in the chamber dimmed as the sphere's glow shifted to gold. The captain's voice was faint but steady. "You found it, didn't you?" The slave turned slowly, his eyes glowing faintly now. "Yes," he said, his voice stronger than before. "And I know how to reach it." But before the captain could respond, Afafa, the Cums, came alive with a cold, familiar voice. "Well done. Little experiment," Commander Thal said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You've saved us the trouble of searching." The cold voice of Commander Thal echoed through the chamber. His words clung to the air like poison. The slave's hands slowly dropped from the glowing sphere, the golden light fading from his fingers. The captain's eyes locked on him. "They know we're here," he said. calm but sharp. The blast door behind them slammed shut with a deep clang. The sound of locking bolts echoed through the metal walls. The captain drew a sleek pistol from his belt, the barrel glowing faintly. "Stay." "Close," he ordered. The slave clutched the black device tighter. Feeling its weight more than ever before, a deep vibration shook the floor, somewhere above. Engines roared to life. "They're moving the ship," the captain muttered. "They're not going to let us walk out." Through a small viewport. In the chamber, the slave could see the hangar doors opening again, but not for them. Rows of Dominion fighters were sliding out into the black void beyond. Their formation was precise, deadly. "They're preparing for war." The captain said. The comms crackled again. "You're surrounded." "Human," Thal's voice sneered. "Give us the boy, and I may let you live." The captain's reply was short. "You'll have to kill us both." Thal laughed a low, rumbling sound like grinding metal that can be arranged. The lights in the chamber flickered, then turned blood red. The hum of the core link faded as energy was rerouted to weapons. The captain's jaw tightened. "They're cutting us off from the core connection." The slave stepped forward. "I can still reach it," he said, "but I'll need more time." The blast door behind them exploded inward. Molten metal scattering across the floor. Dominion. Soldiers poured through, their armor black and reflective, their weapons glowing with charged energy. The captain moved instantly, firing precise shots that dropped the first 3 soldiers before they could raise their weapons. Slave ducked behind the sphere, his heart pounding. Every shot echoed like a drumbeat in his chest. The black device in his hand pulsed once. Then again, faster. It was almost like it was impatient. His fingers began moving over its surface without thought. Strange symbols lit up under his touch. The sphere in the center of the chamber responded. Faint golden streams began flowing through it again. The captain noticed. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," he called, ducking behind a console as a volley of plasma tore through the air. The slave focused. He could feel the link opening again. But he could also feel something else, a presence pushing against his mind, a voice he recognized, even without hearing it aloud. "Thal, you can't win." The voice whispered in his thoughts. "You were made to obey us." The slave gritted his teeth. "Not anymore," he said aloud. The device flashed bright, and the golden light surged through the sphere once more. The soldiers hesitated, their movements slowing for just a moment, enough for the captain to take down 2 more. But then a new figure stepped through the smoke. Tall, broad-shouldered, clad in armor that glimmered with deep crimson light. His face was hidden behind a visor, but his voice was unmistakable. "Commander Thal, you think you're free?" Thal said, stepping closer. "You think this human saved you?" The slave stood slowly from behind the sphere. "He did?" "No," Thal said. "He just delayed the inevitable." The captain moved between them, his weapon raised. "Take one more step, and you won't take another," he warned. Thal chuckled. "You don't even know what he really is. Human, do you?" The captain didn't move. "I know enough," he said. The slave's grip on the device tightened. Memories surged again. Training rooms, missions, coded transmissions. And then one moment stood out. Thal, standing over him years ago, telling him he was worthless. That word echoed in his head. Not anymore. He moved. Faster than he thought possible, the device struck Thal's chest plate, releasing a burst of energy that lit up the chamber. Thal staggered back, his armor smoking. The captain seized the moment, firing shot after shot into the commander's shoulder joints, forcing him to retreat. "Go." The captain shouted to the slave. "Finish the connection." The slave turned back to the sphere, pressing both hands against it. The golden light flared brighter than before. Through the haze of data flowing into his mind, he found what they needed: coordinates, access codes, and something even more valuable, a hidden protocol buried inside the Dominion's own systems. It was a shutdown command for every ship in their fleet. The captain covered him as more soldiers entered. Blasts shook the chamber, pieces of the ceiling falling around. "Them, I have it." The slave shouted, "Then use it." The captain yelled back. The slave entered the final sequence into the device. Outside the viewport, the Dominion fighters suddenly froze in place, their engines dying. Even the warship itself began to power down. Lights flickering, weapons going. Dark. In the chamber, Thal turned sharply toward the slave. "What have you done?" He roared. The slave met his gaze. "Something only a human would believe I could do," he said, his voice steady. The captain grabbed his arm. "Time to leave." They ran back through the maintenance tunnels as alarms wailed and the massive warship drifted helplessly in space. But the victory felt thin. The coordinates to the core were now in their hands, and so was the knowledge that Thal would survive. And when he came back, he would not be alone. The Aurora tore through space, leaving the silent Dominion warship behind. Inside the cockpit, the captain's hands gripped the controls while his eyes stayed fixed on the endless black ahead. The slave sat in the co-pilot's seat, the black device resting in his lap. He could still feel the heat of the core's connection in his hands. As if the power was lingering inside him, neither of them spoke for a long time. The sound of the engines filled the silence, steady and unbroken. Finally, the captain glanced at him. "You did more than just shut them down," he said. The slave looked up, unsure. "You hurt Thal." The captain continued. "I saw it. He wasn't ready for you." The slave's hands tightened on the device. "I want him to feel what I felt," he said quietly. "Every moment in the cages, every word he used to break me." The captain studied him for a moment before speaking. "Revenge can be a reason to fight, but it can't be the only reason." The slave didn't answer, but the fire in his chest didn't fade. The coordinates to the core glowed faintly. On the navigation screen, it was buried deep inside a collapsing star system, surrounded by fleets. Getting there would mean passing through Dominion territory again. The captain tapped the screen. "We can't go straight there," he said. "We need allies." The slave frowned. "Allies? Who would fight the Dominion?" The captain gave a small, dangerous smile. "People who hate them as much as we do." They changed course toward a distant cluster of asteroid colonies. The journey was long, and in the quiet hours, the slave found himself staring out the window. Watching the stars blur past, every so often, memories returned. Fragments of his training, faces of the other children in Project Veil. Most of those faces ended in the same memory. Thal's soldiers dragging them away. He gripped the edge of the console until his knuckles went white. The captain noticed. "You're remembering more," he said. "Yes," the slave replied, "and every memory makes me want to kill him more." When they arrived at the asteroid colonies, the Aurora slipped into the shadow of a massive rock. Hidden docking bays lit up like fireflies, guiding them in. Inside, the air smelled of metal, fuel, and too many people living in too small a space. The captain led the way through narrow corridors, past miners, traders, and mercenaries. Some nodded to the captain. Others stared at the slave with open curiosity. They reached a dimly lit room where a group of rough-looking figures sat around a table. One of them, a tall woman with a scar across her jaw, stood as the captain entered. "Didn't think I'd see you again, Vega," she said. "Needed a favor." The captain replied. The woman's eyes flicked to the slave. "And who's the kid?" "The reason we're all still breathing," the captain said. The woman studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You've got 5 minutes," she said. The captain explained quickly the core's location, the shutdown command, and Thal's survival. The woman whistled low. "You're going to hit the core. You're either very brave or very stupid." "Both," the captain said with a grin. The woman agreed to help, but her price was steep. A promise to share whatever they found in the core. The captain didn't hesitate. "Deal," he said. The slave said nothing, But in his mind, the core wasn't the prize, Thal was. That night, as the Aurora refueled, the slave stood alone in the docking bay, staring at the stars. He thought about Thal's voice, the way it used to echo in the cages, calling him worthless, his hands clenched into fists. The captain's voice came from behind him. You can't let him live in your head forever. The slave didn't turn around. He'll live in my head until I end him, he said, his voice cold. When they left the colonies, they didn't go straight to the core. Instead, the captain took them into the shadow of a dead moon, a place where Dominion ships often passed through. It wasn't long before they found what they were looking for, a lone Dominion patrol ship. The captain's plan was simple: capture it, send a message, and let Thal know they were coming. The Aurora moved like a predator, engines silent until the last second. They hit the patrol ship with an ion burst, freezing its systems. The slave boarded with the captain, the black device in his hand. The soldiers inside fought hard. But the slave was faster now, his training surfacing in every movement, one by one. They fell until the corridor was silent. They reached the control room. The captain handed the slave the comms. Your message, he said. The slave activated. The channel Thal, he said, his voice steady. I'm coming for you, and when I find you, I'm going to finish what I started. For a long moment, there was no reply. Then Thal's voice came through, low and sharp. I'll be waiting. Little experiment, and when you fail, I'll make sure you beg me to end you. The channel went dead. The captain looked at him. You sure you're ready for this? The slave's eyes burned with determination. I've been ready since the day he put me in chains. Asterisk. The Aurora streaked through the darkness, heading for the core's coordinates. The slave sat in the co-pilot's seat, the black device resting in his hands like a living thing. Every mile they traveled felt heavier, not from fear, but from the weight of what waited ahead. Commander Thal was there, and this time it would end. The dying star that hid the core burned like a wound in space. Its light washed the Aurora in gold and red. Around it, Dominion ships formed a steel wall, their formation tight and unyielding. The captain studied the display with a cold, calculating gaze. They know we're coming, he said. They've been waiting, the slave replied. The plan was simple: break through the blockade, reach the core's chamber, and use the device to awaken it fully. The captain's allies from the asteroid colonies were already moving in from the far side, drawing some of the Dominion ships away, but Thal's flagship remained anchored near the core, unmoving, like a predator guarding its prey. The Aurora dove into the fight, weaving between bursts of plasma and glowing missile trails. The slave's hands moved over the secondary controls, disabling targeting locks before they could fire. The captain flew like the ship was part of him, turning at impossible angles, dodging death with every roll. A path opened toward the core surface. That's our way in, the captain said, pushing the throttle forward. The surface of the core was not solid metal, but a shimmering shell of energy. The Aurora passed through it like water, and suddenly they were inside. The chamber was vast, stretching for miles in every direction, filled with floating structures of light and shadow. In the center pulsed the true core, a sphere of golden fire, its surface shifting like liquid glass. But they were not alone. Thal's flagship slid in through another entrance, its massive frame dwarfing the Aurora. It came to a stop, blocking the way to the sphere. The comms came alive. You've run far enough, Thal's voice rumbled. The captain didn't answer. He looked at the slave. Time to end it, he said. The Aurora and Thal's flagship exchanged fire, golden light from the core reflecting off every blast. The smaller Aurora was faster, darting in and out of range, but Thal's ship hit harder, shaking the hull with every strike. The captain kept them moving. Get to the docking bay, he said. We're going in. They slammed into the side of Thal's flagship, locking onto its hull. The airlock hissed open, and the slave followed. The captain inside, Dominion soldiers filled the corridor. But this time the slave was ready. The black device pulsed with each step he took, shutting down weapons, freezing armor, turning the fight in their favor. The captain moved like a blade in the dark, cutting through anyone in their way. They reached the command deck. Thal stood at the far end, his crimson armor shining under. The dim lights, the sight of him, sent a cold rush through the slave's veins, but it was no longer fear. "Little experiment," Thal said, his voice almost amused. "You came all this way just to die?" The slave stepped forward. "No." He said, "I came to live." Thal moved within human speed, swinging a heavy blade of glowing steel. The captain blocked the first strike, sparks exploding in the air. The slave darted to the side, the device glowing brighter with every second. Thal turned toward him. "I made you," he growled. "You broke me." The slave said, "But humans don't stay broken." The device flared, sending a wave of energy through the deck. Thal staggered, his armor systems flickering. The captain struck hard, driving him back toward the viewing window. But Thal was still strong with a roar. He slammed the captain aside and turned on the slave. His blade came down, and the slave caught it in both hands, the device between them. A flash of light swallowed the room. When the glare faded, Thal's armor was cracked, his blade shattered. The slave stood over him, breathing hard. Thal's voice was weak but still defiant. "You think killing me will change anything?" The slave's voice was steady. "No, but it will change me." He pressed the device to Thal's chest. Energy surged, and Thal's body went still. The lights in the command deck dimmed. It was over. The captain stepped beside him, looking down at Thal's motionless form. "You did it," he said quietly. The slave turned toward the viewport, where the core still pulsed in the distance. "No," he said. "We did it." They returned to the Aurora and flew toward the core. Golden light, the slave placed the device against its surface. The core responded, sending waves of energy rippling through space. The Dominion ships outside faltered, their systems shutting down one by one. The blockade was broken. The war was no longer just survival. It was a chance to rebuild. The captain looked at him. "You're free now," he said. The slave smiled. Faintly, "Not just me, all of us," as they left the core behind. The stars opened ahead like a promise. The slave no longer felt like the worthless figure in the cage. He was part of a crew, part of something bigger and somewhere deep. Inside, he knew this was only the beginning.